The grandfather clock in the corner ticks past 9:00 p.m. Outside, Washington lies dark, quiet, unknowing. Inside the Oval Study on the second floor of the White House, a single lamp burns. The room smells of cigarette smoke and coffee gone cold. Maps cover one wall, cables pile on every surface, the remnants of a nation's worst day in living memory. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt sits hunched over a small card table. His leg braces lean against the wheelchair beside him. A cigarette holder juts from the corner of his mouth, unlit, forgotten. In his left hand, he grips a yellow legal pad. In his right, a pencil. He reads the line again, the line the State Department sent him. A date which will live in world history. His jaw tightens. He stares at those words. World history, the phrase of professors, the language of textbooks, bloodless, academic, the kind of thing a diplomat writes when he wants to sound important but offend no one. 2,000 Americans died today, boys burned alive in their bunks, ships twisted into steel coffins, planes destroyed before pilots could reach them. And the best his government can offer is world history. Roosevelt draws a single line through the words. Above them, in his cramped handwriting, he writes something else. One word. Infamy. He sets down the pencil, lifts his head. Through the window, he can see the shadows of armed guards patrolling the south lawn for the first time in the mansion's history. Everything has changed. And in 6 minutes, the time it will take him to deliver these 500 words, he must make a nation of 130 million people understand exactly how. The day begins at sunrise over the Pacific. December 7, 1941, a Sunday, the island of Oahu sleeps beneath a cloudless Hawaiian sky. At the naval station Pearl Harbor, 96 ships of the United States Pacific Fleet rest at anchor. Battleship Row gleams in the early light. The USS Arizona, the USS Oklahoma, the USS West Virginia, the pride of American sea power, arranged in neat formation like pieces on a chessboard. Nobody expects the game to begin today. At 7:48 a.m. local time, Commander Mitsuo Fuchida opens his canopy and fires a single flare from his Nakajima B-5N bomber. Tora, Tora, Toras. Tiger, Tiger, Tiger. The code word for complete surprise. Behind him, 183 aircraft of the Imperial Japanese Navy descend through the clouds. Zeros, Kates, Vals, 6 months of training, thousands of miles traveled in secret. The greatest carrier strike force ever assembled, appearing from nowhere. Lieutenant Commander Logan Ramsey is the first American to understand what's happening. He's standing at the Ford Island Command Center when an explosion shakes the building. He grabs the radio. Air raid Pearl Harbor, this is not drill. The message crackles out at 7:58 a.m., 10 minutes too late. The first torpedo hits the USS Utah at 8:00 a.m. The first bomb strikes the Arizona's forward magazine at 8:10 a.m. The explosion vaporizes 1,177 men in less than 9 seconds. On the West Virginia, Doris Miller, a mess attendant, third-class African-American, never trained on any weapon, carries his wounded captain to safety, then mans an anti-aircraft gun and starts firing. I just pulled the trigger and she worked fine. On the Nevada, the only battleship to get underway, Ensign Joe Taussig takes shrapnel to the leg. They want to carry him to sick bay. He refuses. He keeps directing guns. By 8:45 a.m., the first attack wave withdraws. They've lost 9 aircraft. They've sunk or damaged 18 ships. At 8:54 a.m., the second wave arrives. 170 more planes. This time the Americans are awake. Gunners with burned hands fire through smoke and flame, but the outcome is already determined. By 9:45 a.m., it's over. 2,403 Americans dead, 1,178 wounded, 4 battleships sunk, 4 more damaged, 188 aircraft destroyed on the ground. The Pacific Fleet has been crippled in 110 minutes. 3,000 miles east, in Washington, D.C., the sun has already climbed past noon. Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox is eating lunch in his office when his aide bursts through the door. Sir, Pearl Harbor is under attack from the air. Knox stares. My God, this can't be true. This must mean the Philippines. No, sir, Pearl confirmed. Knox reaches for his phone. At 1:47 p.m. Eastern Time, the call reaches the White House. Roosevelt is in his study with Harry Hopkins, his closest advisor. They're eating lunch from trays, discussing stamp collections, trying to relax on a quiet Sunday. The phone rings. Roosevelt listens. His face goes pale, then it hardens into something cold, something dangerous. No. He sets down the receiver. Hopkins stares at him. What is it? Roosevelt speaks slowly, as if testing whether the words are real. The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor. Hopkins shakes his head. There must be some mistake. They wouldn't dare. It's no mistake. The report is confirmed. For a moment, neither man speaks. The full weight of the disaster settles over them like ash. Then Roosevelt grabs the phone again. Get me Hull, get me Stimson, get me Marshall. I want everyone here in 1 hour. Across the Pacific, 275 miles north of Oahu, Admiral Chuichi Nagumo stands on the bridge of the carrier Akagi. The returning aircraft are landing. His pilots are celebrating. The attack has exceeded all expectations. Commander Fuchida approaches him with a recommendation. Admiral, we should launch a third strike, target the fuel depots, the repair facilities, the submarine base, destroy their ability to recover. Nagumo stares at the horizon. Somewhere beneath those waters, American submarines are hunting. Somewhere beyond radar range, American carriers, absent from Pearl Harbor by chance, might be searching for revenge. No, we have accomplished our mission. We withdraw. But admirals, the decision is made. Fuchida bites back his argument. In his memoirs, decades later, he will call this the greatest strategic blunder of the Pacific War. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, commander of the combined fleet, receives the attack report aboard his flagship in Japan. His staff officers toast with sake. They speak of victory. Yamamoto does not drink. I fear all we have done is awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve. Whether he actually spoke these words is debated by historians. What is not debated is the truth behind them. By 3:00 p.m. Washington time, the cabinet has assembled. Secretaries file into the Oval Study one by one. Hull, Stimson, Knox, Morgenthau, Perkins, their faces gray with shock. Secretary of State Cordell Hull speaks first. Mr. President, the Japanese ambassadors were in my office at 2:20 p.m. They handed me a memorandum breaking off negotiations, while their planes were already bombing our fleet. Roosevelt's voice is ice. Were they aware of the attack? They claimed ignorance, but the timing was too precise. They knew. General George C. Marshall, Army Chief of Staff, delivers the casualty reports as they arrive. Each number lands like a hammer blow. 2,000 dead, 18 ships hit, Hickam Field destroyed, Wheeler Field burning. Roosevelt listens, takes notes, says little. At 8:30 p.m., the full cabinet meets. At 9:00 p.m., congressional leaders arrive. They crowd into the study, Democrats and Republicans standing shoulder to shoulder for the first time in a decade of bitter division. Republican Senator Hiram Johnson of California, an isolationist who fought against intervention in Europe, speaks first. Mr. President, what do you need from us? I will address Congress tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. I will request a declaration of war. No one objects, no one asks for delay. The attack has done what years of Roosevelt's persuasion could not, united a fractured nation behind a single purpose. But the speech is not yet written. At 10:00 p.m. the study empties. The advisors leave. The cabinet departs. Only Grace Tully remains, Roosevelt's personal secretary, the woman who has typed every speech he's given for a decade. Roosevelt wheels himself to his small card table. Grace, take a letter. She sits, notepad ready. Roosevelt begins to dictate. Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in world history. He pauses, frowns. No, wait. Tully's pencil hovers. The State Department has prepared a draft, 17 pages of diplomatic language, detailed accounts, historical context, legal justifications. Roosevelt has read it. He will ignore almost all of it. What he needs is not a legal brief. It's not a diplomatic memo. It's not a historian's analysis. What he needs is a weapon. He needs words that will transform a stunned nation into an angry one, words that will take 130 million individuals, isolationists and interventionists, farmers and factory workers, mothers who still remember the last war, and forge them into something unstoppable. Yesterday, December 7, 1941. He repeats the date, lets it hang in the air. A date which will live in. Tully waits. Roosevelt picks up his pencil, writes something on his notepad, crosses it out, writes something else. Infamy. Tully looks up. Infamy. Infamy, a date which will live in infamy. She writes it down. In that single substitution, Roosevelt has done something the State Department's 17 pages could never accomplish. World history is observation, distance, the voice of a scholar studying events from the safety of a library. Infamy is judgment, moral condemnation, the voice of a man of a nation that has been betrayed. The word comes from the Latin asterisk infamia, disgrace, shame, evil reputation. It carries biblical weight, it accuses, it condemns, it refuses to forgive. The Japanese did not merely attack, they committed an act of infamy. That changes everything. Roosevelt works through the night. He dictates, he revises, he strikes out phrases and replaces them with shorter, harder ones. The State Department's draft mentions the simultaneous attacks on Malaya, Hong Kong, Guam, the Philippines, Wake Island, Midway. It buries this information in paragraphs of context and analysis. Roosevelt tears it down to bare bones. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Hong Kong. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Guam. Last night, Japanese forces attacked the Philippine Islands. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Wake Island. And this morning, the Japanese attacked Midway Island. 5 sentences, 5 hammers, each last night building on the last, piling outrage upon outrage. The State Department wants to explain the history of Japanese-American relations. Roosevelt writes, the United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan, was still in conversation with its government, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. At peace at Japan's solicitation, looking toward peace. The treachery is self-evident, no explanation needed. The State Department urges caution in describing the attack's success. Roosevelt writes, the attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. Direct, unflinching, he does not hide the losses. He forces Congress, forces the nation to confront them. And the closing, the State Department proposes a measured request for authorization of military response. Roosevelt writes, I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire. Unprovoked, dastardly, words of rage, words of contempt. By 3:00 a.m. on December 8, the speech is essentially complete. Roosevelt makes one final revision to the opening line. The typed draft reads, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. Roosevelt adds a single word in his handwriting. December 7, 1941, a date which will live in world infamy. Then he crosses out world. Just infamy alone, unmodified, absolute. Morning breaks over a changed city. Machine gun emplacements ring the White House. Soldiers patrol with fixed bayonets. For the first time since the War of 1812, Washington, D.C. prepares for the possibility of direct attack. Roosevelt takes breakfast in his study. He reviews the speech one final time. At 11:30 a.m., he summons his valet to help him dress. Black cape, black hat, gray morning suit. He is lifted into his wheelchair, then transferred to an automobile. The Secret Service has tripled the guard. Motorcycle escorts line Pennsylvania Avenue. At 12:07 p.m., Roosevelt's car arrives at the Capitol. He is helped to his feet. He locks his leg braces into place. He grips the arm of his son James, a captain in the Marine Corps. Step by painful step, they make their way to the House chamber. The journey takes 10 minutes. Each step costs enormous effort, but Roosevelt refuses the wheelchair in public. He will not let the nation see weakness today. At 12:29 p.m., the doors open. Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States. The chamber erupts, senators, representatives, cabinet members, Supreme Court justices, packed into every seat, lining every wall. Roosevelt moves to the rostrum. He opens the black leather binder containing his speech. The chamber falls silent. He begins. Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate and House of Representatives. His voice is calm, measured, he does not shout. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941. A pause, just long enough for the date to sink in. A date which will live in infamy. The word drops like a depth charge. In the chamber, men lean forward. Women clutch their handkerchiefs. Something has shifted in the air. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. Suddenly, deliberately, each word chosen for maximum impact. He continues, 6 minutes, 500 words, no rhetorical flourishes, no literary digressions, just the facts delivered with the cold fury of a prosecutor. The chamber listens in absolute silence. Hostilities exist. There is no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interests are in grave danger. He reaches the end. I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire. The applause is deafening. Members leap to their feet. Republicans and Democrats, isolationists and interventionists pounding their desks, stamping their feet. A nation that could not agree on anything has suddenly agreed on everything. The Senate votes at 1:00 p.m. 82-0. Unanimous. The House votes at 1:10 p.m. 388-1. The lone dissenting vote comes from Representative Jeanette Rankin of Montana, a pacifist who also voted against entry into World War I. She will lose her seat in the next election. At 4:10 p.m., December 8, 1941, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signs the declaration of war against Japan. 0 hour, he tells the assembled press, is now. In Tokyo, the Japanese government receives word of the declaration. The Diet, Japan's parliament, meets in special session. Prime Minister Hideki Tojo addresses the nation. The key to victory lies in a faith in victory. But the faith is already misplaced. Admiral Yamamoto's fears prove prophetic. The American carriers, absent from Pearl Harbor during the attack, will return to strike back. The fuel depots Nagumo failed to destroy will power the Pacific Fleet's recovery. The repair facilities will raise sunken battleships from the harbor floor. Most of all, the sleeping giant Yamamoto dreaded has not merely awakened. It has been filled with terrible resolve. In December 1941, American factories produce 300 aircraft per month. By 1944, they will produce 9,000 per month. In December 1941, the U.S. Navy has 17 operational aircraft carriers. By 1945, it will have 99. The Japanese calculated that Americans lacked the willpower for total war. They believed a devastating first strike would demoralize a soft, divided nation into negotiated peace. They were catastrophically wrong. And the speech that Roosevelt delivered that day, 507 words, 6 minutes, one unforgettable word, was the match that lit the fire. Historians have studied the infamy speech for 8 decades. They return to it again and again, parsing its construction, analyzing its rhetoric, measuring its impact. Dr. Davis W. Houck of Florida State University, who has examined Roosevelt's original drafts, notes, "The genius of the speech lies in what Roosevelt removed, not what he added. Every edit made the message sharper, cleaner, more powerful." The Library of Congress preserves Roosevelt's handwritten revisions. You can see where he crossed out world history. You can see the moment infamy first appeared on the page. Sandra Seidelin of the National Archives describes it. That single word change transformed a diplomatic communication into a declaration of national identity. It told Americans not just what had happened, but what it meant and what they must do about it. Roosevelt understood something that many political leaders forget. Words are weapons. In the right hands, at the right moment, A single sentence can accomplish what armies cannot. Churchill knew this. We shall fight on the beaches. Kennedy would learn it. Ask not what your country can do for you. Lincoln demonstrated it at Gettysburg, 272 words that remade a nation's purpose. But Roosevelt's infamy speech holds a unique place. It was written in a single night, under pressure no president had faced since Fort Sumter. It was delivered to a nation that had been, just 24 hours earlier, bitterly divided over whether to fight at all. And it worked. The day before Pearl Harbor, public opinion polls showed that only 20% of Americans supported entering the war in Europe or Asia. The day after Roosevelt's speech, that number was 97%. 130 million people, transformed overnight by 6 minutes of words. Roosevelt would deliver many more speeches during the war. He would guide the nation through 4 years of sacrifice, rationing, casualty lists, and anxious waiting. He would not live to see victory. He died on April 12, 1945, just weeks before Germany's surrender. But when Americans remember him, they remember December 8, 1941. They remember the words. They remember *infamy*. The Arizona still rests at the bottom of Pearl Harbor. Oil still leaks from its ruptured hull. A tear each day, the Navy calls it, for the men entombed within. A white memorial spans the sunken ship. 2 million visitors come each year. They stand in silence. They read the names of the dead, and in their minds they hear the voice of a president who understood that the right word, at the right moment, can change history. Not world history. Infamy. On the evening of December 7, 1941, Franklin Roosevelt sat alone in his study with a pencil in his hand. Outside, Washington lay dark. Inside, a single lamp burned. He read the line the State Department had written. A date which will live in world history. And he crossed it out. In its place, he wrote a single word, a word that would echo through generations, a word that would bind a fractured nation into an instrument of total war. Infamy. Some words describe events. Some words create them. The difference is everything.